Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Clinton Bonner. This is a very special Seahawkers pod as we got a lot of NFL news today. There were three major coaching carousel stories. We're going to cover each and every one of them and how it might impact our Seattle Seahawks coming up on the Seahawkers podcast. Stick around. Of course, before we get going, we are marching to 5,000 subscribers out here on YouTube. So what can you do to help out? Well, pretty easy. YouTube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like, hit the bells, and we have a slew of really cool off-season content coming up. In fact, right now, as I'm recording this, Brandon and Adam are down in Dallas, Texas, because they are heading to the Shrine Bowl, hanging out with the bootleg football guys and lots of other folks. So they're going to have some really unique content and some first person POV stuff, looking at some of those prospects coming out of Shrine. So stay tuned for that as well. Okay, so back to this trifecta of big NFL coaching carousel news. Of course, one's going to take the cake. That is the fact that our guy, our love, and my love, Coach Pete Carroll has found a new home, a season removed from being removed from a 14-year career with the Seattle Seahawks, a championship career. Of course, he is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. Some interesting stuff right there. Let's talk about it. The first thing I'd say about the Coach Carroll hire is, good on you, Raiders, and good on you, Coach Carroll. I still love Pete. I don't care. I don't think you care that he's 73 years old. I think he's got a job to go do, and he wants to go prove that he can still go do it. So I think it's just all good vibes. Look, when he was let go, I had some hard times with it at the beginning. A year away from it now, I could say, look, I think the Seahawks made the right decision when they made the decision, and I'm very happy with Coach Macdonald. So far, so good. With all that, I'm also real happy that Pete gets this chance to end his career in maybe a more Pete Carroll fashion. So a bit about this Raiders team that's interesting as well. They've had some changes real soon. Just going to make sure I get this right. John Spytek just became the GM. He was the assistant general manager with the Bucks for a long time. He just got on board. And of course, the guy behind the guy is now the, somewhat owner, has some percentage of ownership. That's one Tom Brady. So this is intriguing, right? Look, I think Tom Brady looks at this thing and he understands what has to happen to get this team back to a level of prominence. And they're bringing in a coach who is known for what? He's known for, besides being a great defensive coach who literally changed the NFL game, he's also known as a player's coach. And he's also known that everywhere he's gone, he's gotten the very best out of whoever the quarterback was. Kind of the quarterbacks had their best seasons under Coach Carroll, although he's been labeled as a dude who just wants to run the football. And that's, we know as Seahawks fans, that's not exactly true at all. They were balanced teams. They were complementary teams. And when it was time to open things up, he likes taking his shots downfield also. So it'll be fun to see this new combination of a brand new GM who was just hired, I think 2 days ago now, with Tom Brady looming back there, with a historic franchise, with the Davises and then the terrible haircuts and everything already. And now you got Coach Carroll. So this is just some interesting stuff. And getting back to why the Raiders might make this call now, well, it's the culture, stupid, right? I mean, that's what this is. I think the really cool part of the arc that this could provide for Coach Carroll is that, look, he's never going to come on camera and say that it's not his job or his desire to bring the Raiders back to championship football, right? 70s and all those of the Madden teams, et cetera, et cetera. He's of course going to say that's his job, get them back to a Super Bowl. But in reality, that's not really his job. His job is to get this team back to respectability, back to consistency, and create a new platform for whoever the next coach is going to be. Now, look, he's here for 3 years guaranteed, a 4-year option with the Raiders. At that point, he's 77 years old if he makes his way all through those. But who knows? Maybe he's still coaching. Good on him if he is. But I don't view that as his job. I think his job is to create a culture, an atmosphere, get them back to winning ways. And if he has to hand it off at that point, so be it. He's done a really good job and puts a kind of a lovely bow on what's going to be a Hall of Fame career. I want to give you some numbers on these Raiders just to show you kind of how low can you go. So what's that delta? What can Pete do to get them back to respectability? Maybe it's not so much. Listen to these numbers. Okay, a few things here. I'll read this off. The Raiders have not won a playoff game since the 2022 season when they won the AFC Championship game versus the Titans in early 2023 in that playoff run. They would later go on to lose to the Bucks. Okay, that's the last time they won a playoff game. So calendar year 2023. It's 21, 22 years ago. Also, since that loss in the Super Bowl, they've only been in the playoffs two more times. They made the playoffs in 2017 and we're out, made the playoffs in 2022 and we're bounced. So, really, if you look at the last, sheesh, what is that, 22 seasons? 22 seasons? They've made the playoffs twice. So, that's what I'm getting at, Flock, is just sure. Would it be super cool if Pete brings him back to that Madden level of prominence? Yeah, that would be an unbelievable ending to his career. But I don't think that has to be the goal or be the delineation of success for Coach Carroll with the Raiders. So I know I'll be rooting for him. I imagine you're going to be rooting for him as well. Now, what could it mean for our Seattle Seahawks? I'd love to get your comments on that. Put them down, in the YouTube channel down there. Let us know what you think. In general, though, look, there's already all this dirt kicking up about could Russell Carrington Wilson get back with Coach Carroll because, Russ is going to be a free agent or is now a free agent. I'm a bit more fearful that this could be the lever or the excuse to move on from Geno Smith, and we end up trading Geno over to Coach Carroll and the Raiders and Tom Brady. And oh, by the way, Geno Smith's numbers indoors inside domes, he's unbelievably good inside. From a Raider standpoint, I actually think it could make a lot of sense. From a Seahawks standpoint, I don't think it makes sense, but I don't call the shots either. I'm kind of fearful that it could happen, though, Flock. But again, are there some other Seahawks reunions you're thinking about that I'm not thinking about? Let me know in the comments, please. Final thought on Coach Carroll is Raiders fans, enjoy that man. Enjoy what he's going to bring. Energy, love, knowledge for the game of football. You've got a special one with Coach Carroll. Enjoy every second. Coach Carroll, Pete, go ahead, dude. Have that beautiful ending to what has been an immensely successful college and NFL career. I'm rooting for you. I'm absolutely pulling for you. Go Raiders in the AFC starting in 2025. Why not? Okay, big topic number 2, the return of Robert Saleh? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Earlier today, it's splattered all over X and Twitter and elsewhere that Robert Saleh is back as the defensive coordinator for our rivals, the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm sitting here going, boo earns. I don't want that because Saleh is quite a good defensive coordinator. Now, hitting the fast forward button a little bit, as it stands right now, it's about 6 o'clock at night on Friday as I'm recording this Eastern time, and maybe not so fast. Robert Saleh has not been confirmed by the 49ers yet. And now there's rumors that other teams might be trying to either pluck him for still a head coach role or maybe a defensive coordinator role, maybe back with, I don't know, the Raiders we just talked about, or maybe over with the Lions where they just lost Aaron Glenn going over to the New York Jets. So interesting stuff abound here, but let's talk a little bit about Robert Saleh. Let's assume the 49ers are going to land him as a DC. What does that mean for our Seattle Seahawks? How did we get to now? Just look back pretty quickly that Robert Saleh was with the New York Jets for the last couple of years. And how did that end? Well, he was axed week 5 of this year. And if you remember, there was that little bit of a shunned bromance on the sideline where he went to go in to hug Aaron Rodgers after like a last second touchdown. And Rodgers just denies him the hug. And then the whole thing falls apart. But 5 weeks in, he's axed this year. Likely very, very early for sure. And if you look back at the Jets this year, they were the 5th ranked defense after 5 weeks. And then post Robert Saleh, the whole thing fell apart. I believe they were dead last ranked the rest of the year. But let's turn back the clock a bit more and look at Saleh's first tenure with the 49ers, which was quite good. So, no snark or, extra glorification here. Let's just talk about facts, or at least opinions and some facts mixed in. For me, the truth is Robert Saleh is a proven defensive coordinator. And when the 49ers had him, they were really quite good as well. So let's examine some of that. So his first stint, or what we believe will be his first stint, was 2017 through 2021, I believe. And really in 2019 and 2020 is when that defense peaked and were really elite. 2019 specifically, they were second in total defense, they were first in pass defense, and they were fourth in their sack totals. Let's also remember that as much as we are probably sick of seeing the Kansas City Chiefs win Super Bowls, we do have to give some love that Patrick Mahomes and the 2019 Chiefs in the 2020 Super Bowl were able to defeat the Jimmy G led 49ers 31-20, preventing them from hosting the Lombardi Trophy. So, as much as we're sick of the Chiefs winning, still, thank you, Patrick Mahomes. Thank you, Andy Reid, and the rest of you for keeping the 49ers out of that winner's circle. So Saleh, highly successful in those years with the 49ers, really running a defense that was quite similar to Pete Carroll's defense. And he had immense talent in the 2019-2020 season as well. Stays one more year through 2021. Then he heads out and gets the job with the New York Jets. We talked about his last season with the Jets, that truncated 5-game window. But the years previous, Saleh had the Jets peaking at some of the best and most elite defenses in the league once again. So just this guy has a very consistent track record of understanding, well, being like a gravitational force to get good players who want to go play for Robert Saleh, and then understanding just how to play solid, consistent defense in the NFL. He's a very good DC. And you have to remember too, the 2 years previous with the Jets, they had the kind of lost year with Zach Wilson, where the defense was very good. Then they had a season where Aaron Rodgers blows out his Achilles 4 plays into the season. And yet those teams were like 7-win teams. They had some pretty big victories. Their points per game were like, giving up like 18 points a game, 20 points a game. They were solid NFL defenses without an offense that could stay on the field. They were doing the heavy lifting. So all this being said, Robert Saleh looking like he's going to be back with the 49ers. All I could say at this point, we don't know that that's for sure. As a Seahawks fan, I respect the guy and I hope it all falls apart. It would be absolutely lovely. Be so cool to wake up tomorrow, the day after, to hear that, nope, in fact, he took a different DC job or a head coach job, and he's not going back to the Bay Area. I don't want him there. And last thing I'll say about that too is, even if he is to go back, this is not the 2019 roster. This is an older, slower, not as talented defensive roster that the 49ers will be giving back to Saleh. Now, with that, do I think he's talented? Do I think he'll get the most out of the current situation and build a really good defense again? I got to say, I think that's a likely outcome because he's done it now basically everywhere he's gone. But Robert, why don't you stay out of the Bay Area? Go somewhere else. Go to Detroit. You're from Dearborn. Go to Detroit. All right, on to topic 3 we go. Late Friday, this news broke, and this might be the most surprising of all 3. Bobby Slowik, the 2-year or 2-season offensive coordinator with the Houston Texans, is no more. He will not be getting a 3rd year, and he gets axed. And this was kind of surprising for a lot of reasons. For me, I could go back and look at Bobby Slowik and say, okay, you got 2 years as an OC, 2 years with what is a rookie and sophomore season from CJ Stroud. You make the playoffs both years. You win a playoff game both years. And then you still get axed. It's definitely a tough pill to swallow. It's like the Texans are looking at this, and Ryan's their head coach is looking at this. And maybe it's just they don't believe they're going to get over the hump with Slowik, and a change is needed. Who knows what's happening inside that locker room? We'll never know those things. But from an outside perspective, not that I'm watching the Houston Texans all that much, but from an NFL fan perspective, I like what I see with the Slowik teams, even though this year was definitely choppy. So let's quickly cover why was this year potentially choppy, and when it wasn't choppy, what was the good stuff we were still seeing from Bobby Slowik? Let's cover that pretty quickly. So this news might really matter to Seattle, and why? Well, that's because we don't have an offensive coordinator just yet, and of course, you're going to remember that Bobby Slowik was, I don't know, one of 3 final contenders that seemed to be jockeying to be our head coach just last season. So, John Schneider liked the guy. He had him in kind of down the stretch they came. It broke for Macdonald that we could get Macdonald. I think it's a great call. How cool would it be if you could get your defensive guy Macdonald and then you could go get Slowik that you were gonna hire anyway? And of course, he probably would have had offensive play calling duties. And now you get the combo of both worlds. That's got to be attractive to Schneider. He's got to be thinking about it right now, in fact. So we'll look back at year 1 of Slowik in a second, but why was year 2 so uneven? I think this one is a kind of a story as old as time itself, and one that us Seahawks fans, we're really used to. We've seen Geno Smith under duress all year long. In fact, for 3 years now with subpar offensive lines, and in my opinion, playing pretty good football, all things considered. Well, this year, as opposed to last year, the Texans' offensive line was much worse for Stroud. This Texas O line gave Stroud very limited time to throw the ball. And it is a second-year quarterback. And when you start compiling some things such as not great offensive line play, he's still a second-year guy. And then a bunch of their weapons got either they were out for weeks at a time, and some of them were just out for the season. So if you're losing Nico Collins and then Tank Dell for just chunks of your year, well, I mean, kind of good luck, right? I mean, you're losing your 2 biggest weapons for multiple weeks. And that clearly hurt Stroud as well, which clearly hurt Slowik, and it looked very choppy. Now, but let's also look at 2023 versus 2024. Where did it maybe get better? Look, 2023, their running back room was Singletary and Damian Pierce and some others, right? Some third down backs, et cetera, et cetera. They were okay. They're fine, serviceable. And that to me was one of the missing elements of the 2023 Texans was, hey, they can't just rely on the run and be that tough December, January team, which by the way, are the teams we're seeing making deep runs in the playoffs right now with only 4 teams to go as I'm recording this. So 2024 comes along and they go get Joe Mixon. Now you can say what you want about Joe Mixon, like his yards per carry, and maybe he's just been on good teams with lots of opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Fine. That's all. That doesn't matter. What you can look at after a season is another 1,000-yard year for Joe Mixon, but his first with the Texans. Over 4 yards a carry, which is fine. 11 touchdowns on the ground, which is quite good, especially in 2024 NFL. And I think the ground game was, for the most part, pretty good during the year. But again, the passing game did take some significant steps back, and that really hurt the team. So their 2024 stats, basically across the board, whether that's the average points per game or their yards or their touchdowns, it was all depressed. It was all down in comparison to 2023, in spite of the run game getting more consistent. But let's look at like the way that we're probably remembering the Texans, I should say, going out in 2024 and into the 2025 playoffs. Look, they lost to the Chiefs. They get outclassed by the Chiefs in Kansas City. Nobody expects them to win that game, but they kind of hang around for a little bit. And then the Chiefs do what the Chiefs do. They get a little help and they pull away. But let's rewind the clock to just 1 week before that. The Texans do get a playoff game at home, and they're playing the Chargers with Harbaugh, who are this stingy defense and kind of stingy offense. They want to control clock, and they want to really grind the game out in a Harbaugh style fashion and not pass too much, et cetera, et cetera. What did the Texans do in that game? They put up 32 points, albeit there's a pick 6 in that game and several interceptions that helped them get to 32 points. but they still put up 32 points as a team. And if I look at the balance of what that game looked like and what they did to a good, I'm not saying great, but to a good defense in the Chargers, you had 25 carries for Joe Mixon for over 100 yards. You had the star wide receiver, Nico Collins, with 7 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown, and CJ Stroud throwing for over 280 yards in that game against a good Chargers defense. So while 2024 as a whole it was choppy, it didn't look as crisp as 2023. We understand that. I could look at that game against the Chargers and be like, ooh, that's kind of what 2023 looked like. And you've got that good balance of having a better running back in there with Joe Mixon. So for me, the last impression, I'll leave the Chiefs game alone, where it wasn't that bad, by the way. But to me, the last real impression of Slowik is dominating a Harbaugh. I don't know about you, but I like the way that sounds. So why does this matter to Seattle? We said we still need an OC. If Schneider was hot and heavy, that Slowik could be a head coach of our Seahawks. What do you think? Drop a comment. Do you think he's got to be considered? And even if we were about to ink Clint Kubiak or Fraley was the guy or Udinsky, whoever it might be, if they're so close, it's going to happen. Leftwich out of left field. What do you think? Do we take a breath, a little pregnant pause, and go make sure we have a conversation or two with one Bobby Slowik? Drop the comments. Let me know what you think about that. So those were the 3 big NFL coaching carousel stories this week. We got Coach Carroll off to the Raiders. We got Saleh, who we think is coming back to the Bay Area, but we hope not because it makes the Niners immediately better. And now we have the availability of one Bobby Slowik. Hit us with the comments. Let us know what you think. Of course, please, again, it is huge for us that if you're watching this video, give it a like. It matters so much more than you think it does. Drop a comment. That drives the algorithms gaga in all the good ways. Subscribe, leave the reviews. And for those that really want to get involved, because we have such an awesome community at the Seahawkers podcast, go to getintheflock.com. If you want to contribute to the show, $3 and above per month will get you an invite to our Discord where we have hundreds of flockers every single day, just having a blast through the season, through the off season, through draft season, all the seasons, having a lot of fun talking about our favorite team, the Seattle Seahawks. And I think with that, there's only one thing left to say: go Hawks.